I waited a while for this movie. I avoided the trailers as best I could because I wanted to know as little as possible, just like with Inception. I already knew something about one of the characters that would actually end up spoiling a big twist for me, and I honestly didn't want to know much more. Having talked about how much I enjoyed The Dark Knight, I will say right now, I wasn't sure if Nolan could top that movie. I mean, considering how Heath Ledger had been supposed to reprise his role, and considering just how well Nolan had ended the second film, it seemed too good to surpass. Unfortunately, that doubt was to be proven right. The Dark Knight Rises, in my opinion, was not as good as The Dark Knight. Oddly enough, the opening setup of The Dark Knight Rises reminds me a lot of The Boondock Saints 2. I mean, it's been about 8 years after the last one ended, the mob are running scared in the face of a police campaign, Batman hasn't been seen for years, and Bruce Wayne has become a recluse. Physically and mentally crippled from the last movie, Bruce Wayne is disillusioned about what he is and what he should be doing. Alfred continues to serve him faithfully, even as businessmen are closing in on Wayne's companies. One of the people interested in harnessing Wayne's fortunes is Miranda Tate, played by Marion Cotillard. Unlike the others, though, she wants to use the money to give back to the city through green energy investments. Meanwhile, the police in Gotham have been very successful in their war on crime, and hundreds of prisoners are in jail due to new legislation named for the late Harvey Dent. Commissioner Gordon, much like Winston Churchill ended up becoming, is a war hero living in peace times, and he's losing popularity because of it. However, there is a rising star in the police force named John Blake. Played by Joseph Gordon-Levitt, Blake hears of rumors that a criminal organization is being developed beneath the city. And so we're introduced to Bane, the main villain of The Dark Knight Rises. In the comics and the animated series, Bane was your stereotypical muscle man who had chemical-induced superhuman strength. In the case of this film, Bane has an apparatus which provides anesthesia for old injuries. As played by Tom Hardy, Bane has a Romani accent that sometimes sounds a bit like if Sean Connery was voicing Darth Vader. Bane is also a former member of the League of Shadows, which was the organization from the first movie. This means he has immense fighting abilities to rival Batman, while also possessing a very military mind when carrying out his plans. Bane is essentially a terrorist leader, and he's determined to carry out the plans of Ra's al Ghul from Batman Begins. Unlike The Dark Knight Rises is a movie that cannot be understood without having seen the movies before it. It relies on what's been established so much that even brief flashbacks won't be enough for the innocent moviegoer. Aside from the additions of Bane and Miranda Tate, there is another main character introduced in the film. Batman's constant rival and sometimes love interest, Selina Kyle, also known as Catwoman. Catwoman has always been a thief and part-time criminal in the Batman universe, but she was also ready to ally with Batman against common enemies. In this film, Catwoman is played by the lovely Anne Hathaway. Already a great actress, Nolan directs Hathaway into giving a very good performance in the movie. Catwoman is not a superheroine, nor is she very heroic at all. She's entirely focused on getting herself out of a bad situation and thinks nothing of stealing from the rich. Meanwhile, Batman struggles to stop Bane, even as Bane sets up a plan to take over the city. He also acquires information that will expose the conspiracy behind Harvey Dent's end in the last movie. What I liked about this part of the movie is that they go into the fact that what Batman and Gordon decided to do at the end of the last movie was in fact the wrong thing to do. The idea of the end justifying the means only works if the end is actually achieved. And when that doesn't happen, what then? Gordon and Batman's lies being uncovered ends up disillusioning a lot of people against the old authorities, and it taints the legislation made in Dent's honor. With this spread of chaos, Bane is able to ride the wave and take even more power for himself. Now, before I go on and give away more of the movie than I already have, I should talk more about what I liked and what I didn't like. As I said before, I really liked the performances. The return of the regulars, such as Bale, Oldman, Kane, and Freeman, was expected, and I also really liked the new additions of Hathaway, Cotillard, Gordon-Levitt, and Hardy. The action was great, and the conflicts faced by some of the characters were really well established. The relationship between Batman and Catwoman was very well done. Bane wasn't quite as good as the Joker had been, but he was much more memorable than Scarecrow or Ra's al Ghul were. One surprise is the emotional weight that Alfred has in the movie. Two of his scenes are arguably the most emotionally moving moments in the whole film. Unfortunately, this is hands down the most polarizing of Nolan's Batman trilogy. The story leads Bruce Wayne to face a singular obstacle throughout the second act, and there are a few flaws with this that have been pointed out in several other places on the internet. I won't go too much into it, but you can pretty much guess where the flaws spring up. Unfortunately, I don't really like how they ended the movie either. It starts to end pretty well, but then there are two revelations near the end of the film that just bring the movie down a bit for me. To be fair, one of those revelations involves a supporting character's background, and my dislike for it is entirely subjective. I just thought it was ridiculously tacked on at the last minute for the comic book fans in the audience. The other revelation, revealed almost right at the end, seems more bizarre than anything, and I'm sure people will joke about it for quite some time. All in all, though, Nolan has still succeeded in making a full trilogy on Batman, something that nobody else has been able to do yet. And flaws aside, it's one of the best superhero trilogies ever made. While there seems to be a curse on the third movie in any superhero trilogy, I would still call The Dark Knight Rises a good movie. The good elements outweigh the bad, and we will always treasure the work that Nolan's put into the Batman story. So, at this point, I've caught up to Nolan's filmmaking resume. By this point, he has shown that he's one of the best directors of the last 20 years. He could literally make anything he wants, and people will trample over each other to work for him. I personally can't wait to see what he gives us next. And the fact that I'm not sure what that something is going to be kinda adds an edge of surprise to it. But either way, I'm sure it will be very interesting to watch.